Now, if you haven't been here very long, if you're relatively new, this time every year we stop and we have what we call Vision Day, and it's a day when we reflect on the previous year and we talk about the upcoming year and things that we hope to accomplish and things that we get done. So we start by looking back at 2015. The previous year, and look at the goals that we set. Some we did pretty well. We did real well, in fact, and others we kind of stunk. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Several of the goals we had for 2015, one of the things we wanted to do is to finish the process of getting elders in place, which we did, which, by the way, has been a beautiful thing. And the elders are, it's a great thing to watch that work, and you realize how smart God is as you go through that process. The elders have done a beautiful job, and there was like a 6-week stretch in there that was really hard. It was really a high stress. Not just one thing, but multiple things were happening, but they handled it beautifully, and it's been really amazing to see how God uses that process. We also talked about reconnecting with Upson, and we did that to some extent. And one thing that really helped us was the barbecue that the men did. And we raised money for Upson and gave it to them, gave it to the school. We gave them $1,500. And in fact, Dr. Stallman sent us a letter. We printed that for you, but I just want to read a little bit of it to you here. She said, "Dear Pastor Axtell and congregation, thank you so much for the incredibly generous donation to our school from the community barbecue. Your gift of $1,550.15 was totally an unexpected blessing to our school. Your faithful partnership over the years to our school continues to bless our stakeholders in significant ways. This gift will help fulfill many unmet needs in our school for our teachers and students who labor daily to touch the lives of young children in meaningful ways." And the last paragraph, "Thank you so much for your generous gift and for your continued partnership in our mission to engage, empower, and educate our neighborhood children. You have truly made a difference in the life of our school." And so when those guys did that barbecue and decided to give the money to the school, it reopened a door for us to Upson. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about the goals of 2016 here in a few minutes. But also in 2015, one of the goals was to connect with the Hamilton Fellowships, to have 20 new people go to Canada, and I believe we had 28 new people go to Canada, and so we're going to reset that goal a little lower this year because every time somebody goes to Canada, they want to go back to Canada. So we're going to create enough spaces for new people to go, but still let people who've been go because everybody's like, when can we leave? All right? So just as a side note, Jason, Kimberly, and family will be here on February the 13th or 14th, and they'll be here in the service with us, so I hope you'll be here for that. And they're going to be here hanging out with us for a little bit. All right. Also, one of the goals we set was that we would have the feeding ministry with Feeding Northeast Florida happen every quarter, which we did, and that's become a staple around here. And great job of having volunteers, and Donnie George has done a great job setting that up and getting us connected with that. And so that's gone really well. And again, we're going to be doing that in February again. So looking forward to that. Then we set a goal we didn't do so well. We set a goal to meet the budget. And if you remember at the end of September, we had our Blue Bloods round the table family talk and shared with you the reality of what was going on. And we were really kind of in crisis mode. But God came through and you came through, and it's been really cool how we finished off. Our goal was to meet the budget. I think we ended up being at 92% of the budget, which is actually pretty incredible considering where we were at the end of September. But I promise we'll talk more about money before the day's over. But just to let you know that we're working on that one. But things are looking much better as long as we continue to give the way we've been giving. Okay? So what we do on Vision Day is we reconnect to the church in its purest form. When you go back to Acts chapter 2 and you see the day of Pentecost, there were 3 miracles that happened that day. The first miracle was that the disciples spoke in languages they didn't know. The Holy Spirit came on all of them, and they were interacting with people, and they were sharing the truth about Jesus in words they had no idea where they were coming from. Pretty impressive. The second miracle that happened on Pentecost is Peter preached a sermon, And 3,000 people became followers of Jesus in one shot. And the church grew significantly in one moment. And that was the third miracle, was the establishment of the movement that we call the church. And the church has existed ever since that moment, and it has continued on. And so when we read the book of Acts, and we get to Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, there's a description of that first church. And that is the church in its purest form. That's the church before people were able to mess it up. All right? That's the church before the movement became institutionalized. That's the church before all the conflict started in chapter 6. All right? That's what the church is supposed to look like in Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. So one of our goals is to strive to be as much like that church as we can, as we reasonably can. So I want to ask you to turn there with me, if you would, to Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. It's page 1092 if you're using the Pew Bible. Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. And this is how Luke described that early church, and when they first started, and really an amazing place, amazing group of people. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And I read that story and you look at it, especially when you see the Greek, it's just amazing what was going on there. And it's just like, that's where I want to be. And that's where we should all want to be, is to be a part of something like that. Right? So I want to focus on a couple of the characteristics that they had, as I do each year. And the first one is at the end of verse 42, it said, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. One of the things that is key and essential and always important, and sometimes we overlook, is this reality that prayer needs to be a part of who we are. It needs to be a part of our journey as followers of Jesus, as individuals, and it needs to be a part of our journey as a whole. Prayer needs to be a central part of what we do, and it needs to begin with us at home as individuals or on our personal journey. And I want to make it clear that sometimes we talk about the power of prayer, and please don't hear me say that prayer is not significant and not powerful, but the truth is the real power in prayer is not found in the words that you and I speak, but is found in the ones to whom we pray. Amen. Right? And so what makes prayer significant is not the fact that we say it right or we do it right or we interact with God the right way. The power in prayer is found in God's response to it. Okay, and that's really important for us to realize. But I think sometimes we forget this bottom line truth about prayer, is that prayer shows our dependence on God. We go to God in prayer because He's all we got. We go to God in prayer because He's so much greater than us. We go to God in prayer because He can do things that we could never do. And we, as followers of Jesus, are dependent on prayer. And so the Scripture says, Luke wrote that they devoted themselves to prayer. The idea is, in those first characteristics, they sold themselves out to prayer. And they had some amazing things happen. When you continue reading through the book of Acts and prayer, they prayed and earthquakes happened. They prayed and jail cells opened up and people were freed. They prayed and rooms shaked. I mean, it was phenomenal, the things that when they prayed, God did some amazing stuff, because there was this consistent reality that they knew they were totally dependent on God. And I think as individual followers of Jesus, we have to always remember our dependence on Him. And I know I've come to this conclusion, and I should have come to this conclusion decades ago, but I've come to this incredibly important reality about my life. I don't like who I am when I don't pray. I can't stand me when I don't pray. And I found out that the people around me can't stand me when I don't pray either. There's been times that my wife has said, have you talked to Jesus today? And that's all she has to say. And it's like, yeah, I couldn't stand me either. So I go for a walk and I hang out with Jesus because I have to have that time. Because without the Spirit of Christ in me and that time devoted to Him, I can't do it. And I think, and I tell you that not to know, so you can know how bad I am because you already know that, but so that you understand, regardless of our position, regardless of who we are, we've got to have that time where we connect to Him. Right? Prayer is a constant reminder of our dependence on who God is. And so I just want to encourage you as individuals and encourage us as a group. If there's something in your life that's not working out, one of the things I want to ask first, have you prayed about it? Have you prayed about it with God's will in mind? Because He can do some amazing things. And then we have to realize that we have to pray as a group. We already talked a little bit about the elders. One of the things we make sure we do in elders meetings every time is spend a significant time in prayer, because we as elders know we have no idea what we're doing. Is that a fair way to say it? We have no idea what we're doing. And so we go before God and say, God, help us. Give us a clue. And it's amazing to watch how God works in the group, and because we know that we need Him. And so when we come to the point when we think we don't need God anymore, our prayers are very shallow and empty. And the baseline, bottom reality of prayer is we go to God because we need Him. We need Him, and we know that we need Him. And so prayer was a big part of that first church. It needs to be part of who we are individually and collectively. That's why every week we stand up and tell you, hey, there's a place for you to put prayer requests. Not because we think it's a really fun thing to do, but because we believe God is that big and that powerful. And we take those requests to Him. And we trust Him to do that which is very best. So prayer needs to be a big part of the church always. The second thing that I want us to see today is that part right after that. They dedicated themselves to prayer. Verse 43, everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. One of the things that was going on in that first church is that God was showing off big time. God was showing off by healing people. God was showing off and doing all these incredible things. And the word awe really means fear. That the things God were doing were so God-sized and so God-big that they were almost terrified. They were excited and elated, yet terrified. What is God doing? He is so big and so powerful, it's beyond my capacity to understand. And there's this loss of control. And so I've talked to you ever since I've been here about this idea that God still does God-inspired wows. That God still transforms lives. That God still does these amazingly incredible, powerful things that are beyond our capacity to understand. And how cool it is to see when God intervenes in a life. So this morning, we want to share a video with you. And it's a story that's really powerful. Anytime anyone becomes a follower of Jesus, whether they're a young child, all the way to a senior adult, it's an amazing thing that life transformation happens. But sometimes we have stories that are so overwhelming and so powerful, we just are in awe of what God has done. So this morning we want to share this video with you, and it's a story that happened here. It's a story that if you've been around a while, you were a part of, whether you realized it or not. So we share with you the story of Darlene Muto.
Hello, my name is Darlene Muto, and I'm an artist. I've been an artist professionally for about 7 years. I paint on canvas. And right now I live in Ocala, Florida. I live on a horse farm. I help take care of horses, and I talk to them. I don't know if you believe that. When I was about 8 years old, I was a victim of incest. I repressed the memory, however, it did change my life significantly. After that happened, I ended up kind of seeking after attention from people. You know, I don't remember my dad around much. He was addicted to heroin and So I really, really wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be loved, I wanted to be accepted, from men. My mom was there. And so I got into some really bad choices. I got into the sex scene, was a stripper for 5 years. I was a serial dater, which is I just dated, always dating somebody, break up with somebody, immediately date somebody else. I dated women, I've dated men, I've tried everything. I've dyed all my hair for 10 or 15 years. I've pierced about everything you can pierce. I've got tattoos. I was doing a lot of drugs at one point. I drank heavily. I contemplated suicide most of my life, or I dreamt about it. I really daydreamed about it most of my life. It wasn't until about 2007 that I really thought about, hey, I'm kind of sick of this. I've tried everything, even things that I didn't name. There was just so many things that I can't even list them all. And through every single one, I felt like, I'd try this thing and I'd fall back further. And I'd try another thing and I fell back further. It wasn't until I was actually a stripper for 5 solid years and I started to think about God a little bit. Like, I bet he would be really mad at what I'm doing. I mean, this is like, it's kind of like prostitution, except for, you're on a stage, And I thought, really hated that I was doing that and I was lying to my family. And so I stopped really working. I kind of hid in the dressing room and cried a lot and asked God to forgive me, and then I'd have to go on stage. Still had to do it. And then it wasn't until I, met some guy there, which is a terrible idea, moved to Florida, found out he was cheating on me the entire time. Then I moved out, started drinking very heavily. I practically didn't eat. All I did was drink Jaeger. And in the fog, I really don't remember much. All I remember is drinking and sleeping in my car because I didn't want to drive home. And sometimes people would drive me home and I don't remember where my car was the next morning. My relationship with God before I actually was really seeking him. I went to a couple youth things with a friend and it sounded really interesting, like, oh, this guy loves me, like weird, okay? But I didn't understand it. I didn't really get that, like, why he loves me, what it was that, made him want to love me. I didn't understand that because he forgave me of my sins, that I could actually forgive myself of my sins. I really, really didn't get that for a very long time. And so I would basically be like, God help me with this, but then I would still go do whatever I wanted to. And I never really thought about, the things that I was doing as, I didn't really feel guilty until it was much later that I started realizing, like, I bet God would be really mad at me, and then I would be like, forgive me, but, I'm gonna go back and do this anyways. So I was driving and I drove past the sign in front of this church, and what it said caught my eye. I mean, there's a lot of churches that you drive by here, but this one sign caught my eye, and I thought, I really need to hear what they have to say about that. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I know it had something to do with, like, either being lost or being depressed or suicide, something along the lines. I remember just thinking, like, I really need to check that out. And I thought, well, it's really nerve-wracking to, first off, be sober and walk into a church after you drink, the night before until oblivion. So there's this massive amount of anxiety that I was having. I was panicking. I probably gave up going to church probably 5 times before I actually got there, thinking, no, and I can't. No, I got to. No, I can't. I walked in and I sat in the back row, and there's this woman, Pat, that greeted me, And I was kind of like, oh, don't talk to me. You know, don't even look at me. I probably smelled like booze. And so I sat in the back row, and they was talking about exactly what I was going through. Like it felt like he was talking directly to me. It totally freaked me out. But in a good way, you know, because all the other times of trying to, you know, fill this emptiness, fill this void, someone give me attention, someone connect with me, I couldn't find it. But this one day I walk in there, I'm sitting in the back row, and somebody's talking about exactly what I'm going through. I thought, whoa, this is weird. So I was trying not to cry because I felt so moved. And I was trying to not let anybody know, you know, that it was really moving me. And then I ended up coming back the next week because I really wanted to hear what else they had to say. A woman at the door knew my name. She actually memorized my name, which was pretty crazy. I was like, well, someone cares about me enough to memorize my name? Wow. And I sat in the back row, cried again. It was like the same story. It was like the same story for probably a few weeks. And little by little, I started to feel accepted, you know, loved. And I wasn't dressing up, you know. I was wearing jeans and probably a band t-shirt, and nobody cared, you know. That was a really big deal because I was so afraid they'd, you know, reject me. I also had piercings. I had my septum pierced and my lip pierced, and my ears were all big and stuff, and nobody cared. It was weird, but it was nice, you know. It's the first time in my life that someone actually seemed like they truly cared, and when I left, I wasn't emptier than when I went in. I was fuller. And it took a while, maybe a few months to where I was like, okay, this is what I want. This is real, you know. I was starting to feel whole, you know. I wasn't going out seeking to fill something anymore. I felt new, and the things that I've done in the past and all that, I didn't feel like the same person anymore. It was very, very intense. I almost didn't even know how to handle it, you know, because, you know, this person that I had like created, and I had like tried to be this one person, and I like this kind of music, and I like, you know, these things, and I like this color, and I like to wear this type of stuff, and I tried to form this person and create this person, and it took me so long to create this image that now I was like, I don't want it anymore. That didn't do anything good for me. Okay, so before I felt like I needed to be accepted by men. I needed to be accepted. I needed to be beautiful. I needed to be exactly what they wanted. I wanted to be accepted so bad. I got myself into really big messes. The thing is like I had this searching. I moved on a regular basis, almost every year. Moved to a new city, try out this, try out that, everything. But everything, I felt like it was leading me deeper and darker. I got more depressed. I hated myself more and more. I would turn all my anger inward. It was overwhelming. I mean, the littlest things overwhelmed me. I couldn't do hardly anything without just giving up, you know. And then when I actually understood what was, you know, what Christ is saying, and He forgives me and He actually loves me, then I didn't have to search, you know, in these dark, crazy places for this love that never, ever even, I couldn't even find it. Whatever I thought was, you know, oh, this is, someone loves me, someone likes me, ended up turning around and stabbing me in the back every time. But so when I really understood, you know, Christ's love, and He forgives me, and if He forgives me of all those things, I should forgive me. I think this is something that I was a victim of incest, And the person that committed the thing, I thought about if that person was seeking God, then that person never would have done what they had done. And so I think about that with a lot of people, a lot of the really dark things that are happening in the world, a lot of shootings and stuff like that. If that person had someone unconditionally loving them, like God, if they were really seeking God, they never would do the things that they have done. And with that said, I think that we should pray for the darkest of dark people. Definitely. You know? If I was really seeking, God back in the day, I never would have done a whole lot of stuff. I think that continuing to accept people, all people, exactly where they are, which is some of the things that I've heard here, is you meet people where they are at. There's a whole bunch of Christian lingo that I did not understand for a very long time. I had to look it up on the internet. That and the verse, I don't remember exactly what verse it is, but it says that just love. It covers over a multitude of sins. If you just love people, that's powerful.
We can learn a lot from that video. We may bring it up as another message about reaching people at some point, but just clearly remember that God is working in every life around us. And when we look at people and we judge them about where they are and who they are, and we don't realize their potential in Christ, we make a big mistake. We make a big mistake. All right, so they were in awe, and God is still working, and God is still moving, and God is still doing awe-inspiring things today, and we need to never forget that. So with that in mind, with prayer and being awe of God in mind, here are some goals for 2016 that I hope we can accomplish together. The first is that we need to up the ante at Upson. We spent a few years not really being in Upson, and that really was not our doing. But now, because of the barbecue, the door has been open to us, and we need 12 people to volunteer to be reading coaches for children at the school. And if you are available to do that, it makes a huge difference. Now, we ask, why do we do that? We know that if someone leaves elementary school reading below grade level, that every negative indicator in their life skyrockets. They're much more likely to be pregnant, much more likely before marriage. They're much more likely to go to jail. They're much more likely to do drugs, much more likely to shoot someone, and much more likely to die before the age of 21. Used to, in the state of Florida, they would determine how many prison beds to have based on the number of students that couldn't read on grade level when they graduated elementary school. It's a big deal. Right? So we need 12 people to volunteer to read. I've done it before. I can't do it now because of college commitments, but man, it's not hard. You don't have to be really smart or anything. I mean, they read to you, you correct. It's phenomenal. Even I could do it. Kids and I we struggle sometimes, and we had to instruct. Please stay seated. Sit down. Please stay seated. Please stay seated. But you can do that. And it's phenomenal the difference you can make in a child's life. So we need 12 people to do that. Secondly, as far as community involvement goes, I really still feel we need to pursue a deeper relationship with the MurrayHill Preservation Association. And there's some things about that coming on the horizon. But another thing that we need to do, we used to do Operation Neighbor. We haven't done that in a while. We're going to try something different this year. We're going to call it Bless Sunday, and it's blessed based on the group's teaching on how we should live our lives. And so what we're going to do, and the finance team would prefer I should probably say it this way, we're going to come to the building and give our offerings, and then we're going to go and be the church. We're going to have a half dozen projects or so that we can go work on. Some of them will be here, so we're going to have them. So if you can't do physical labor, there'll be things you can do. But we're going to spend a Sunday with no Bible study, no worship service. We're going to go be the church. Okay? And so that'll be coming hopefully in April. We have it on the calendar and we get it all together, but we're going to try that. And but just as a reminder to take one day and say, you know what? We don't come to church. We are the church. And so we're going to remind ourselves of that. So again, community involvement, and of course we'll continue the feeding ministry as we have been. The third thing, is, and again I told you a little bit about this, the goal is to have 15 new people go to Canada. Again, we have a waiting list of people who've already been who want to go back. If you haven't been, you need to go. Nobody goes to Canada and has not changed. So if you haven't been, you need to go, but to have 15 new people go to Canada. And also, the fourth thing is we want to start 3 new groups. We have groups that meet here on Sunday morning. We have groups that meet in other places and other times during the week. And so we want to start 3 new groups this year. And that's something Doug and I have been working on, trying to get that together. And then number 5, I'm going to say it again, to meet and exceed our budget so that we don't have to have any special offerings. Okay? So instead of having a benevolence offering, we're going to take money from the general fund and put it in the benevolence. Instead of raising money to send kids to camp, we're going to pay for it out of the budget, assuming that the giving continues as it has been coming. Right? And so that's really kind of up to us if we continue to give as we have. It's been phenomenal to see that turn around, but it needs to continue on. And so those are the 5. And it's very doable. It's all stuff that can be done and accomplished, but it's all stuff that would make a huge difference. Okay? So I hope that you'll take this journey with us. So as we wrap up today, I want to ask you, if you would, to close your eyes with me. And I want you to think about this Acts 2 church and what it would look like in 2016. And so I want you, and I have a list here, I'm going to go over this, but I want you to imagine a church that is so loving to the community that we are the first place they come to for help and for volunteers. Imagine a church that is so connected to the elementary school 2 blocks away that 100% of the students that leave that elementary school can read on grade level. Imagine a church where no one in the church is under-resourced. Or a church where the building that is used is a center of activity for the whole community. Imagine a church where people far from God can discover grace, and where non-believers feel safe to explore faith and ask questions. A church where believers grow and develop their faith and become more Christ-like. A church where multiple generations worship together. A church where God is continually wowing us by doing the things that only He can do. A church where the brokenhearted can find peace, the lonely can be comforted, and where selflessness is normal. And imagine a church where the Lord adds to their number daily those who are being saved. I believe we are closer to that church than we've ever been. But in some ways, we have a long way to go to get there. So I want to ask you to take this journey with me. In 2016, we continue on this journey to becoming the church that God has called us to be. So this morning for the invitation, we're going to do something completely different. We're just going to open up the front, and I'm going to invite you to come pray with me.